There is a word that can strike fear in some hearts, joy in others, suspicion in some, and denial in many. That word is change. On this episode of Friar Time, we will delve into this phenomena that is integral to life and to our growth. So, fasten your seatbelts. It's Friar Time. Let's start talking. Welcome to Friar Time. And as I just said, welcome to an episode of Friar Time where we're going to be talking about a word that elicits a variety of emotions in the human psyche. But we're going to look at this word through a Franciscan lens. So let's begin with a Franciscan way of looking at change and transition. Now, the best way that I can think of doing this is to look at the life of St. Francis, because in all of our lives, is it one way or many ways that create change and transition? Well, for St. Francis, there's 2 or 3 ways, and let's look at 3 of them. One is the San Damiano cross. Legend has it that this cross spoke to St. Francis and asked him to rebuild the church, which was falling into ruin. The second one was when Francis encountered a leper. Now, for Francis, the worst thing in the world, and in the time of Francis in the Middle Ages, one of the worst encounters you could have would be that of a leper. The disease was extremely contagious. They would have to wear a bell so that nobody would get near them. And oftentimes what would happen is, if someone wanted to be charitable to them, they would often throw coins at them to keep them away, so they would never get too close to an individual. For Francis, that was part of his DNA. He abhorred lepers just like everybody else did. And the third episode in his life that caused a lot of change and transition would be the stigmata, where the wounds of Christ appeared on his hands and in his side and in his feet. So let's look at those. So some biographers would say that it's a single event that transformed Francis from this wealthy playboy into this popular saint in the church. Others would say it was a series of events that went along, and it was kind of like a gradual process. I think for the average person, changes in life are both. Sometimes a single traumatic thing can change our lives, and oftentimes our life is in process of change through various events that happen to us. It's kind of like the caterpillar and the butterfly. It can be a slow process that eventually comes to fruition. If we look at the word trans, the etymology of trans from the Latin means to go across or go beyond, to change, to cross over. So the question comes up then personally for you and me, are you open to change? Let's take a quiz. If you ever went to Catholic school, you remember the nuns would say to you, clear off that desk, we're going to have a quiz. So we're going to take a little quiz that's going to take us through change. So the first question, true or false? People resist change. The answer, false. People don't exactly resist change, they resist loss. So if you take that word change whenever it's being used and change that word to loss, I think you come up with a whole different perspective about what's happening to a person undergoing change. If you ask yourself, what am I or what are they losing? Are they losing a friend? Are they losing a partner? Are they losing familiarity? Are they losing prestige? Are they losing money? Are they losing information venues? What is the person, what are they losing when this is happening to them? And I think you'll see it offers a different kind of perspective than what we usually think of as just change. The second question, managing resistance to change is more difficult than managing apathy about change. The answer to that is, it's much more difficult, okay, to deal with apathy about change than it is resistance. Why is that? Well, because, first of all, if I ask you about changing something and you say to me, I think that's a wonderful idea and we are going to go forward and we're going to really change, and then you turn around to the next person and said, that is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. I'm not going to be part of it. I'm going to do everything I can to sink that ship. Well, I think that's a lot worse than if the person comes right up to you and says, I disagree with you on this change. I'm not going to go for it. I'll discuss this with you. So there's an honest encounter there that allows you to understand this person doesn't want this change, and let's discuss why they don't want the change, rather than have them have two faces when they talk about it. As the slide says, I'm not passive aggressive. I use indirect communication skills. Why? Because that's totally passive aggressive. This third question, I think, is probably the most important of all of them. The most difficult aspect of any change effort is the determination of what the future state should be. Okay? That brings us to a whole new idea of change versus transition. Change is not transition. Change is situational. If I'm moving from one city to another, if I'm moving from New York to Milwaukee, if I do that on December 1st, that's the change. On December 1st, in the morning it was New York, in the afternoon it's Milwaukee. The change has taken place. The transformation, however, has begun before that and continues after December 1st and could go on and on and on. Why? Because transition is a psychological process that has to do with change, but is not the change. Transition is psychological and internal. Change is external. Change is the fact that this was and is changed now. So what was at 12:05 is not the same as what happened on 12:10. It's a change. It's an event. It's over with. That's a change. The transition is what is going on in the heart, the spirit, the mind. That's the transition. And that is not a simple process. That's the process that people have difficulty dealing with. It's not the event of the change, it's the transition that goes with that. So the starting point for the transition is not the outcome, but the ending, what must happen to leave this situation behind. So in the change, that happens all at once. The transition, however, continues and continues and continues. So change hinges on the new thing. Transition depends on letting go of the old identity and the old reality, and has to do with emotion, mental, physical, and spiritual aspects of a person's life. Transition starts with an ending. It starts with a withdrawing from someplace. It's a letting go of your friends, of your job, of your apartment, of your house, of the relationships that you fostered in a specific area. It's about a letting go of that. It's about loss, sorrow, pain, mourning, woe, grief. That's part of the transition process. We are letting go of something. And after the letting go, as it starts, then we move into what is called the neutral zone. And this is an integral part of any change and transition, is how we negotiate the neutral zone. The slide you see now is interesting because what you're seeing is an ending, the neutral zone, and a beginning. But look carefully at that slide and you will see that there is overlapping on each of them. There is no ending that ends, no neutral zone that ends and begins, and no beginning that begins and ends. It's all flowing one over the other. It's a constant flow of emotions and of transition that is going on here. Now, what happens during this neutral zone? Well, during the neutral zone, enormous things happen. A lot of things are going on. First of all, interestingly enough, we understand that motivation drops about 50%. In other words, the fact is, I just don't want to get out of bed. I have to start this job today. I just don't feel like even getting up and getting dressed and going. At the same time, anxiety jumps 50%. So we're talking about being anxious about starting a new job, getting into a new place, moving with new people, whatever. At the same time, our motivation is dropping, our anxiety is going up. So now we're in a position where we're kind of like pulled from two different emotions. I got to get going, but I don't really want to. There's a lot of a feeling people often feel in the neutral zone as if they are overwhelmed with everything. Everything seems like a chore. Everything is a major effort to do. It just keeps going on, and I feel overwhelmed. Oftentimes in the neutral zone, I feel like communication is just gone. When I really need to be communicating about what's happening to me in the neutral zone, I kind of just, I'm not getting it. The communications kind of fall aside. Oftentimes there's a lot of misinformation that starts, and at the same time that all of this is going on, and we really see there's a lot of chaos in there, our creativity rises. Why? Because oftentimes, look through history, whenever there is chaos in history, oftentimes rises up wonderful artists, builders, historians, all of that kind of creativity comes. Why? Because the rules are kind of suspended during the neutral zone. So let's take an example and see how a neutral zone fits in there. Okay, so I'm taking a new job now in Chicago. I moved from New York to Chicago. Let's say I have an apartment now and I go into the apartment, so I have to put this place together, all right? Well, already the transition has begun. The change has taken place. I was in New York, now I'm in Chicago. But the transition has started before I left New York, emotionally, spiritually, all of these things are preparing for this move to Chicago. Now I'm in the city, I'm in an apartment, etc. I don't know where the silverware is. Maybe it's not packed. I can't sleep at night. Why? Because I don't know where anything is in the apartment, but I have to start work the next day. So now my anxiety is rising, my motivation is dropping. I'm in this chaotic time of neutral. I don't know people at work. I don't have any friends in the area. I don't know where even a good restaurant is or a place to go for friends with a drink. None of this stuff, it's all new to me, in different levels, That's the transition of the neutral zone. That's the time when I don't know what's going on. Let me give you a good example of that. If you've been to the circus or you've seen it on TV, there's a point where the trapeze artist is swinging back and forth on the trapeze. She or he is going back and forth. And what's coming the other way? The empty trapeze. When does the audience gasp? When they let go of this one and they haven't gotten the other one. It's that in-between time when the audience gasps. The neutral zone is that in-between time when I'm not here and I'm not here. I'm not finished with the ending and I'm not into the new beginning. It's that neutral zone, that time of chaos, that time when I just don't feel comfortable with just about anything, including myself. So how are we going to work our way through that neutral zone? Well, first of all, oftentimes, unfortunately, in the neutral zone, a lot of times people decide, I'm going backwards, back to the good old days, which were never the good old days, if you really look at it. But the fact is that I create a nostalgia for a past I might never have even known. But it seems better back there than being sitting in here, like Job sitting on the pile of manure. That's sometimes what the neutral zone feels like. I'm just sitting in this stuff. And until I can work my way through that, and how do I do that? By being honest about it. I'm in the neutral zone. I don't like it, but I have to figure out ways of getting out of it. And one of the best ways of moving through it is by talking about it. Find someone you can talk to about this. Tell them, I just feel like I'm in nowhere land here. I'm in neutral zone. Nothing's moving forward or backward. Express your feelings and then begin to look at things in short-term episodes. So for example, create small little projects for yourself. I'm going to unpack by Wednesday. I'm going to put the silverware in the silverware drawer by Thursday. I'm going to have these things, small little measurable actions that you can turn around and say on Wednesday night, I did that, I accomplished that. Don't try going months or years out because that's not going to work. Do measurable small actions that you can evaluate and say we're good. This time I walked all the way around the block instead of halfway. Anything that helps you do something to negotiate the neutral zone is really good. As we move through the neutral zone, we're going to find out that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of loss probably pertain very much to us. In a change effort, there is oftentimes denial and anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But they don't all happen in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They happen all different ways in different orders. And oftentimes when someone accepts a change, all of a sudden you might feel yourself going back to anger or denial. So any of these kinds of changes, these all move around. And we need to be aware of the fact, especially in the neutral zone, that this will last as long as it is not negotiated. All of us have seen people and know people who have not negotiated the neutral zone well. Oftentimes you hear, they lost their partner or their spouse, and they've never been the same since then. And yet there's other people who have suffered a great loss like that, who then, after a year or so, seem to kind of move on with their life. Those people have negotiated the neutral zone. As difficult as it may be, if we don't negotiate that neutral zone, the transition and the change never end. And if we don't do that right and it never ends, the future then is impossible to attain. And then what will be said of us? Well, for all the sad words of tongue and pen, the saddest of these is, it might have been. Don't let your future be, it might have been. Let your future be, it is and will be. Thank you. God bless, and I hope every change and transition in your life goes well and beautifully for you. This is Father David. Thank you for joining us at Friar Time.